Well, hello, Facebook people. I think we're live, and I'll know for sure in a few minutes once we get over there. But I'm just going to pull this one down for a second so that I know what's going on, and you guys know what's going on too. Well, hello. Welcome to FrankieSense and More. I am your host, Frankie Picasso, and today on the show, at the top of the hour, you're going to meet my guest, Craig Kolavo, who authored the book, I Am God in Disguise, and So Are You. Later on the Good Media Network's movie critic, Brent Marchant, will join me for Movies with Meaning reviews. And today he has 3 movies that you should see, and 2 he says, maybe you should save your money. What will those be? Well, I don't know. I do know. I agree with one and not the other, so stay tuned for that. But first, I just wanted to tell you about something good. You know, when you connect with spirit, I'm always surprised, and I don't know why. Today's card is so perfect. And I always say, I can't believe it because they're always so eerily accurate. But I can believe it because, hey, God's all-knowing, right? Craig, you're going to love this. This card is from my Mother Nature Spirit cards, and I pulled it out today. It's the card of co-creation, and it's the most amazing card and one of ongoing success. And, you know, Craig, he writes in his book about spirit and about connecting with spirit. Well, this card is allowing spirit, the universe, God, I am, whatever you want to call this entity, to co-create with you, to be your business partner, your relationship partner, your co-creation partner. And I mean, how can you go wrong when you've got this wonderful partner who's doing all the heavy lifting for you, who's making all these amazing things come true for you? The dreams are flowing freely. They're all being manifested. The white and the feather represent spirit and purity and light, and the goodness and the yellow, represents happiness, joy, communication. So what an absolutely perfect message for today. Craig is the author, entrepreneur, philanthropist, father. Are you grandfather yet, or are you soon to be still?
Soon.
Soon to be.
Couple weeks.
Okay, congratulations.
Yes.
And a husband, yay. In 1987, he founded Computer Comforts, a business that created innovative desks to classrooms, and which he still runs today. In 2012, Craig also founded An Awesome Life, an online site that's fueled by his passion for service, wellness, and yoga. So on the site, you'll find inspirational posts and prints and other things that he sells to raise money for local charities, which is beautiful. Craig, you were introduced to Wayne Dyer and Bob Proctor and Dennis Waitley, and I guess that fueled your spiritual awakening. You were in good hands there.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And the irony is, by the way, first, Frankie, thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to come on your show and share my message with your audience.
Oh, it's my pleasure.
Yeah.
You mentioned at the beginning of your book that you originally set out to write a legacy book for your children, a sort of don't, live the hard way, live smarter, don't make the same mistakes I made, but that's not what happened.
Well, that's very true. That's very true. So my original intention was just to share some of my life experiences, as you've said. And I don't know, maybe all parents feel this way at some point. And by the way, my kids are in their 20s. As you just said, my daughter's getting ready to have a baby. But maybe all parents feel this way at some point. Why should my kids have to go through the same crap, the same struggles and pain and suffering I went through? Mm-hmm. So lucky for me that I've been a seeker for decades, which really means that I've been journaling like crazy for many, many years. So I pulled out this dusty box of journals, spread them all across my kitchen table, and the process took, I don't know, from beginning to end about 2 years. My wife really, my wife appreciated the boxes of journals
yeah, I'm sure she did.
On the kitchen table. But really, Frankie, what happened about, I don't know, 4 to 6 months into the process, as I'm trying to organize and put this in some kind of a chronological order, all these experiences, the good, the bad, the ugly, the aha moments. Within 4 to 6 months, I stepped back and this picture just kind of jumped out at me. The stories just unfolded. And I swear, it was like someone gave me a secret treasure map. The joke, though, is this map is in puzzle form, and the pieces were released to me over decades. So I didn't have access to this treasure map when I was in my 20s, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, I remember my kids would always say, "So what is the universe telling you today?"
Yeah, yeah,
They don't believe it. They think it's all nonsense until I think you almost have to reach a certain age and live enough of life really to
exactly.
let it unfold for you.
Exactly. Well, when I saw this treasure map that was revealed, it was both exciting and terrifying because I instantly knew that I couldn't just keep this to myself or I couldn't just write this just for my kids.
Yeah.
And the reason that was terrifying is because I'm a rather introverted kind of private person and I knew
Okay.
that someday, I figured someday, for example, I would have to be doing this, which is kind of terrifying to me. So,
But exciting.
so it's very exciting. So my intention evolved to answer your first question to writing something for my kids. Now my intention is to just share a really good positive message with the world and raise money for one of my favorite charities. And if I can just squeeze this in real quick,
Yeah.
100% of the ebook proceeds goes to water.org. If you don't know who these guys are, they're fabulous. Matt Damon started this organization 25 years ago. They are helping people worldwide. When I was researching organizations to support, what made them different, it reminds me of the quote from Lao Tzu about you can give a man a fish, feed him for a day, or teach a man a fish, feed him for a lifetime. That's what water.org's doing. They're going into these villages and communities that don't have access to safe water, and their experts on the ground are helping people find water, dig wells, build bathrooms. I mean, it's amazing what they do. So listen, even if you're not interested in the book, check out water.org. It's
Yeah.
well
No,
worth it.
it is fascinating. And they're giving microloans to people, people who
Yes.
literally make $3 a day.
Yes, and there's something about ownership. So
Mhm.
now when they come in and they build this infrastructure and these people now have the pumps and they're pumping their own water and they're making these little micro loan payments of $20 a month or something. And there's pride in ownership. So there's sometimes that charity is just not enough.
Right.
And this is really cool.
Yeah, it is really cool. And I love that, they're not spending their whole day just gathering water because now they
Right.
can put their resources to other things. So, kudos to you for doing that. And I think, I wrote in one of my books, my first book, I think, about you get to a point in midlife where you've done so much and what is left is service. Really, it's part of that metamorphosis. I call it a metamorphosis that happens instead of the midlife crisis. I think it's the midlife metamorphosis that happens where you start to you go inward, but you're outward, and your focus is how can I help others? What can I do, to change the world around me? And that's one of the reasons I started what I started. So I'm really happy to see that, that the proceeds are going to go to water.org. So go there, everybody, and check that out. I love that.
All right. Thank
You've
you.
got 6 stages to your process. And I think it's always so interesting when I read what other people write about it, because somehow we all get close to the same message. And I don't think that we're just reiterating what other people have said. We go through something and it's for real.
hmm Frankie, I think what you're right. There are tons of books out there, and you mentioned at the opening that one of my favorite authors is Wayne Dyer. He wrote 38 books on the same subject,
Hmm.
and I think what he was just trying to do was, maybe if he changes his message just that much, he might click with a new group that wasn't connecting before. But bless his heart, I mean, I think after I had this published earlier this summer, my feeling is one and done. I had this one story I had to get out, and my goal was to you're shaking your head now. It's not going to happen that way. Someone, my agent told me it's like having a baby. Just give it time, you'll change your mind.
I just published my 4th book. It doesn't stop. It doesn't stop. Once you're a writer, you get hooked.
You
But
forget. You forget. It takes a little while to forget about
yeah, the pain.
the
It's
pain.
painful. It
Right.
is. It is. But it sounds like yours was kind of channeled a little bit too.
Well, so I guess my message in a nutshell, if I can just kind of boil it down real quick, and then I'll double back and answer your question, is I believe that we are all born into this world as body and soul, and both are equally important. And I call this in the book our primal way. This is, how we originally entered this planet. And everything that happens during the course of our life is designed to lead us to discovery, to discover that divine part of our being. Call it whatever you want. Call it God, soul, spirit, it doesn't matter. So I believe that all events are designed to lead us back to remembering or discovering that part of our being. So kind of in summary, I've identified a primal purpose, kind of a collective purpose that I think we all share as human beings. And really, Frankie, I would think this would make a lot of people, this would be comforting, because I've heard so many people over the years complain or be frustrated about not knowing what their purpose is. So I believe we all share the same purpose, and that's to discover the divine within, that sleeping giant, the dormant power that resides within all of humanity, to surrender to that power, because being aware of it's not enough, and then to inspire others on this path. So it's like the hero's journey. After I wrote this book, I discovered more about the hero's journey, and it talks about going out into the wilderness and battling your demons and gaining wisdom, but always at the end of the journey, you're doubling back because you want to share what you've discovered with your tribe, with your community. And I have to say, you don't really have a choice, because once you feel the connection, you have to share it. So yes, I've identified 6 stages that kind of go along with that collective purpose that I just talked about.
I think part of what, when you talk about the sleeping giant and the battle and the epic battle and all of that, where our language is different. I talk about being heart-centered, living heart-centered rather than head-centered, and heart-centered is living spirit-led, and head-centered is leading earth-led, let's say. Right. And it's interesting, like, we're not all at the same place, and we can't all be at the same place, obviously. And I'm a big believer in past life and in reincarnation. And so, when you look around the world where people are, where how some people live and where there's no way that they could possibly even grasp some of this. Mm-hmm. Although some people do, they walk out of, I just read about some guy yesterday, he walked out of a little village in Bangladesh someplace and became like a world heart surgeon or something crazy. So it's like they come from anywhere and everywhere, but yet, there go I, for the grace of God, we could be living there, but we live in this wonderful place in North America that's just lush and full of everything you could ever want, right? You come from a war-torn country, you know what that's like, and I mean, it's incredible. So we're very fortunate to be here, but not, even though you're in North America, not everybody is ready to go to the next step. They're not all ready to enter that 5th dimension or even the 4th. They're going to stay here for a little bit because there's some learning to do. But you're right, there's some pain. And when you get pain involved, you go a little faster.
Right, that is a great point. That's a great point. So if I can, the first 3 stages of the 6 lead us to discovery. And in my mind, or in my life, really, when I look back and think of things, I think of them before and after discovery, because that's the pinnacle, that discover, surrender point. So, in the book, we obviously all start our path at birth. And in a tongue-in-cheek kind of humorous way in the book, I call it alien birth. And the reason I do is because I looked up the definition of alien, and it just fits so perfect. I actually wrote it down here. Any being foreign to its current environment, an outsider belonging to a very different place. Mm-hmm. And I love that. I picture at birth we are being pulled from this invisible world of pure energy into the world of form. Even the doctors, Frankie, say that somewhere after the 22nd day after conception, that this spark just appears from nowhere. That is your soul. That is God. That is my opinion. So that's, I believe, how we enter this world as this invisible spirit getting pulled into form, and that becomes the sleeping giant. Two things have to happen before we enter the school of life. And one of them is that spirit, that soul part of us, volunteers to take the back seat. It volunteers to go into temporary hibernation, so to speak. Because for us to go into the school of life, we've got a lot to learn. We have to learn how to be human beings. We have a lot to learn about human nature. And we really need to be focused. So a lot of the experts in this spiritual field will say that forgetting our divine nature is the root of all evil. And I totally disagree with that concept. Forgetting our divine nature is part of the plan. There are no mistakes. Now, not remembering, now that's a problem. So the stages of the book take us through the school of life. As I mentioned at the beginning, we all share the same purpose, to eventually go back, discover that divine part of ourselves, because that's when the magic starts. Let's get through the school of life. It could be brutal. I'm hoping in my book we can't skip any of these steps, but what I'm hoping is I might be able to share a light on the path so you can move a little quicker.
Well, I think one thing that you said that was very accurate is that when the universe is talking to you, you have to listen, because if you don't listen, they hit you with a hammer, and if the hammer, you don't listen to that, then they wallop you with a tree trunk. And I had that happen to me, and I knew that they were talking to me. I was like rush, and running up the ladder and couldn't wait to get to the top of that pinnacle. And they're like, I go, I don't know what you're saying. Be more clear, because otherwise, forget you. And I carried on. Well, fast forward 6 months in a hospital.
Oh no!
You have a lot of time to think.
Right.
And I lost everything. And that is that dark night of the soul. And when you start to come back, it's very spiritual, and it's enlightening, and it's incredible. But it hurts.
No,
It hurts like hell.
It hurts like hell is right. And I too was one of the stubborn ones. So I believe that's a universal law, that all experiences, there's no mistakes. Yeah. Everything is very intentional. And the universe is giving us lessons every step of the way. And that's what the school of life's about. But Frankie, like any school, if we don't pay attention to the lessons, they become harder and harder and harder. So in the beginning, the universe wants us to succeed. So in the beginning, the lessons are very gentle. It's just like a slight little poke with a stick. Mm-hmm. And if we ignore it, and I'm guilty, I was one of the ones who just rushed to the next experience, and then to the next and to the next, without being in the moment, to focus on what was going on. Okay, why did that happen? Trying to gain the wisdom from these life lessons. The lessons got harder, and like you, I got hit over the head with the sledgehammer. Not all of us have to get hit with a hammer. So,
but it does make change easier.
So would you say, Frankie? I often say that pain, in some respects, is a good thing, because it pushes us in the right direction a little bit, in a strong way sometimes. I mean, what are your opinions on that?
Absolutely. I think that, change happens best in chaos. And for many, many people, because I've become an expert on change, I know that, they're not going to change unless they're forced to change. Unless you love change, like I love change. I've always loved change. But I also think that we come here with a mission, and that we signed up for this. We signed up for that because we wanted to know what something feels like. We can't feel that on the other side. You have to feel it here and understand it here. And so you say, you know what, I'm going to do this, and I'm going to feel it, and it's going to hurt, but I don't understand what that means until it actually hurts. You don't know. You don't get it. But we get it now.
Right. Exactly. So those experiences that get harder and harder, when we finally learn it, we make adjustments and we move on, and hopefully we'll get to graduation sooner than later.
Well, the good thing about the human brain is it's like a servometer, right? And so once you've done something once, the brain says, oh, I know it. I kind of remember what that's like. Okay, I can do that. I can take that information in and adjust. I'm adjusting, and it's kind of like we had last week, so I can adjust, and it's going to be this week. And so I get it. I'm going to listen this time. I'm not going to be stupid again, right? We do learn. Right. We can learn.
Well, I'm a firm believer that in every adversity, there's seeds of wisdom. But if you're talking to someone that is just hitting the wall and they're getting banged against the, getting hit in the head every day, they don't want to hear that. You're going to tell them, hey, listen, there's, look for the learning lesson there, because it takes some time for those seeds to blossom occasionally. Now, sometimes it's quick. Let's say you get fired from your job today and tomorrow you get a new job that's 10 times better. Okay, that's a no-brainer. Oh, yeah. That was perfect. The lesson was so easy. But sometimes it could take years. And that's why in my book, I looked and I interviewed some people, because this message, this learning and understanding this law is very, very important, because you'll go through all your life kicking and screaming if you don't get it.
Yeah.
And one of the friend of mine that I interviewed went through breast cancer, and she nearly died. So obviously when they were rolling her into surgery, she wasn't thinking, oh, what a blessing.
No.
But she said, within a couple of years, I had hindsight and I was able to look back, and she said to me, Craig, it was the best thing that ever happened to me. She said, cancer was my friend. And I was blown away when she said that. So it's hard to give people advice when they're up to their elbows in the crap. But, there really is a light at the end of the tunnel. And if you be vigilant, look for the answers, eventually, or have faith. I think that's what faith is all about. I mean, for me, the school of life has shown me enough results that were blessings in disguise, what we're talking about, that I can now have faith in the things that have not revealed themselves yet. So I know that it might take 6 months or 6 years, who knows?
Right.
But so I'm over the instant gratification hump.
The other part of that too, though, is if something keeps showing up in your life or is not showing up in your life, then it's time to look at how your subconscious thinking, because we always manifest what we think, what we are in alignment with. And so if that great job or that great house or whatever hasn't shown up and you're like, oh gee, I really, 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 really want it so bad, you know what, there's some thinking that's not right that's going on that is canceling you manifesting that. And so just go inside and look for that thread. That's all I can say. There's a clue. Look for the thread.
Well, for me, what happened, Frankie, and I believe that I'm not alone in this, and it's the stage that goes from discovery to surrender. If I can just tell you, I had 3 experiences when I was around 32, 33 years old. And so up until then, I was totally unconscious, totally sleepwalking through life, had no idea I was on a spiritual path or that such a thing even existed. I called up a friend of mine. I invited her to go out to dinner, and she said, sure, but I have a meeting I'm going to this evening. She said, you want to go with me, and then we'll go grab dinner? So I went with her, and it ended up being a Course in Miracles meeting. Yeah. It was a workshop she did every week. So that was and I'm not going to lie, it was weird. Almost everything they talked about went over my head. I was very uncomfortable with, they used the G word a little bit too much. I mean, that's where I was.
Yeah.
But that was my first experience hearing that kind of language. About a week or 2 later, I got invited to go to a church service on Sunday. And I laughed and I explained that I wasn't a religious guy. I'm not churchy. But they were like, come on, it's not a traditional service. So I went, and it ended up being Unity Church, and it was pretty cool. It was a really positive, non-denominational kind of message, good music. So I enjoyed it. It was, again, a good experience. After service, I went to the men's room, and in the hallway was a poster advertising an upcoming speaker, and that speaker was Wayne Dyer. So I went into the bookshop, I bought a ticket, and went and heard Wayne Dyer speak, a week or two later. So those three things all happened within the same month. And if I was a little bit more in tune, I would have seen the universe pushing me in that direction. So you mentioned not being ready for a message. I bought a couple Wayne Dyer books at his lecture, and those books sat in my nightstand for a year. And one day I tossing and turning, I can't sleep. Life, the school of life is hitting me over the head a lot with the club. And I just said, what the hell? And I pulled out one of these crazy books and I started reading it, and I was more open to it. And the next day I came home from work. I'm following instructions in Wayne's book on how to meditate for the first time. I'm closing the mini blinds, locking the doors, because I didn't want anyone to see me doing this weird stuff. So it was a really gradual process of that awakening. And just slowly but surely, I discovered, hey, you're not alone in there. And it was a really, really cool feeling. So that was my discovery period at 32, 33 years old. And like you said, it happens different for everyone. But I just wanted to point out that when that happens, for me, I thought I had arrived. I mean, there was like a 48-hour period where, I kid you not, I felt like I was this enlightened.
You hit the pinnacle of that, yeah.
Oh, that was it, man. It was over. And little did I know that you've got your human nature and your divine nature now at odds with each other. My bodyguard is what I call it in the book, who's my, your ego, your separate self, the one who's been protecting me and guiding me for 32 years, was like, hey, while you were being all new agey over there with Wayne, you forget about me, so I had this struggle that lasted, this epic battle is what I called it in the book, is it lasted for me almost 20 years. And I'm embarrassed that it took so long.
No.
But some people never, get to surrender. So
I'm going to, because we're going to be running out of time shortly. Tell me, what do you feel from yourself? Because I think for everybody, it's a feeling or a hearing or a seeing or a knowing or whatever. But this surrender, the best part of surrender, what do we want to look forward to when we actually do that? What is it? What is the best benefit that's going to make me want to pick up that next book? Or read your book and go, I'm God too. Yeah, I like that.
Right. So the biggest rewards of surrender, because we live in a society where it's like, okay, what's in it for me?
Absolutely.
That's right. And I don't blame anyone out there for that feeling. For me, the biggest rewards of surrender were, number one, to become a conscious player. I mentioned before surrender, after surrender. So those first 32 years were unconscious. I was fighting against life. After surrender, you're going with the flow of life, and you just this wave. Life becomes a lot easier. You become content, and you literally start communicating with that soul, that spirit, that divine part, your inner guide. It becomes, I kid you not, it is no different. When I sit down in the morning to have a cup of coffee with my wife at the kitchen table, I have that kind of communication now internally with my inner guide. So that's one of the biggest rewards. The second biggest reward is when you discover the divine within, you see it in everyone else too. And that is where a spiritual revolution can take place. Because think what would happen if everyone on the planet made this discovery and got to surrender as quickly as possible, and we were all in this place. And now you define your neighbors not by their skin color or their nationality or their race or their sexual preference. Peel off all those superficial labels, and you discover that we're all one, the world would be a very different place. So those, and then some of the other rewards on a more personal level, those are kind of esoteric, discovering the divine and communicating with your spirit. On a more personal and practical level, your physical health changes quickly, dramatically. I was dealing with addictions. I had the worst habits in the world. They all just melt away. You just feel that, hey, wait a second. If I'm going to be a vehicle for God's expression, I want to be a freaking Ferrari. So you just naturally start eating better, start sleeping better, start exercising. I started doing yoga, started cycling and trail running. So physically, your health improves. Financially, my business dramatically changed. Now I go into my office and I'm looking at my employees through these different eyes, and I'm looking at my customers differently, where I'm really, really sincerely there to help them. And I'm caring about my employees. Not that I didn't care about them before.
No, but it's a different, I understand it's a way different way. It's a heart-centered way. It's a heart-centered way. Craig, quickly tell us, okay, your book again is I Am God in Disguise, and so are you. And we can get it at all the markets, Amazon, all those places. Your website.
My website is awesome without the E at the end. It's kind of a play on words. It's the OM, like Om. Yep. Awesome Life, LIFE.com. If you go there, I've got some inspirational posters and prints that kind of go along with the message in the book. So I appreciate your time, and I really enjoyed talking with you.
I enjoyed talking to you too, and we'll have to have you come back one day. Feel free to stick around or go. It's up to you. Brent Marchant, welcome. Hello.
Hey, Frankie. Thanks so much for having me on the show.
Yeah, meet Craig.
Nice to meet you, Craig.
He wrote this terrific book.
Craig, after hearing you speak, definitely namaste.
All right, thank you.
Yeah. So it wasn't too long ago that you were here, Brent, but you've got a couple of movies for us to talk about.
We're coming up right now to the start of award season, so you're going to start to see a lot of releases being rolled out.
I'm just going to share this. Hold on one second.
In a pretty big way from here on to December from now on. So.
Okay, here's our first movie poster. Hang on, we're going to make that bigger.
Okay, so this is my favorite movie that's out there right now. It's a movie that has not received a whole lot of attention, but it's really very, very well done. It's called Official Secrets, and it tells the story of British intelligence specialist whistleblower Catherine Gunn, who in 2003 undertook a very risky venture to expose a ploy that was in place at the time by the U.S. and the U.K. to sort of shame members of the UN Security Council into voting to sanction the war in Iraq. She felt that it was a ploy that was going to really draw in the military and the people at the time to an illegal war. And she didn't feel that she could stand by and just let that happen. So even though she was not particularly politically active herself, she took the step to basically risk just about everything in her life for a principle.
Who did she work for?
She works for British intelligence.
Oh, okay.
She was basically somebody who was responsible for translating cables and things like that. And she came across this memo from the National Security Agency that basically said, hey, let's strong arm these people into voting for us by potentially revealing compromising information about them. And she just could not stand by and sanction that. So that's when she took action to leak the information to the anti-war movement in the UK, which in turn leaked it to the press. And it became a huge, huge story over in the UK. It's a story that's not terribly widely known outside the UK. And actually, you'll find out in the movie why that takes place. But there was an attempt to squelch making sure this information got out in the first place. And
what year was that?
this was 2003. It was right before the start of the Iraq War.
Okay.
And as I say, it's not something that outside the UK that a lot of people have heard about, but boy, it's a story that they really should hear, because there's a very powerful cautionary tale in here in terms of, if you think it can't happen here, guess again.
Yeah.
The means to bring about that kind of intimidation and so forth, they're out there. And she was so convinced that I can't let that happen. I've got to stick to my principles. I've got to be true to my sense of personal integrity.
I love that.
And as a result, it really gives you a very captivating and compelling story. Keira Knightley as Catherine Gunn is just outstanding. I mean, this is probably one of the best performances that she's given in a very long time. I'm really hoping that come award season, she doesn't get forgotten, because she really deserves recognition for this role. And she's also got a fine supporting cast in Ralph Fiennes, who plays her attorney, and Matt Smith of Doctor Who fame, who plays the reporter who broke the story. So it's well worth your time. Go see it.
Sounds good. Now, Raise Hell.
Yes, this is another one of the continuing array of excellent documentaries that's come out this year. This is a documentary about, as the subtitle says, the life and times of Molly Ivins, who was a political reporter back in the second half of the 21st century. I'm sorry, 20th century. Who was in some ways kind of, she was an oxymoron, because she called herself a Texas liberal. She was
She's like
somebody
6 feet tall.
Yeah, I mean, she was 6 feet tall. She was somebody who categorized herself as kind of a hard drinking, good old girl. And she was not afraid to expose corruption, self-interest, and, as she would describe it, political idiocy, and making sure that people knew when they were getting shafted by their leaders. She wrote several books. She wrote a number of syndicated columns, worked for a variety of newspapers. And in doing so, she always made sure to make her point known, but she did it in a way where she did it with wit, she did it with humor, and it was really a very effective way of getting people on board who might not ordinarily agree with her, especially for being a liberal from Texas. It's, like I say, it's kind of a rare animal down there.
Yeah.
But she really led quite a campaign. She was very good friends with Texas Governor Ann Richards, who became well known at the 1988 Democratic Convention for her famous line about George H.W. Bush being born with a silver foot in his mouth. I mean, that kind of gives you an idea of the sort of sense of humor that she had, and the approach that she took in telling her stories. This is a very candid documentary about Ivins, and the fact that it sort of shows her warts and all. She was also sometimes known for being almost a little mean in some of the way that she wrote some of her material.
Mm-hmm.
She was also known for being someone who was struggling with alcoholism and really kind of resisted a lot of attempts to go through rehab. But through it all, she remained very staunch and convinced of her principles, and got the word out to people. And it didn't really matter to her which party you were talking about either. I mean, a lot of people might automatically think that as being a liberal, she was a diehard Democrat, but she was not afraid to take on her own party, as it were, when she felt that they were not doing justice to what they should be doing and serving the better good of the people who were being trounced upon, particularly in areas like government entitlements or civil liberties, anything like that. So she died in 2007, but in so many ways, her story is today probably just as relevant, if not more important, than it was at the time that she was actively writing her materials. She saw the future, and she did her best to make sure, be aware of it.
Mm-hmm.
Don't think that this is going to go away. You have to be aware of this. You have to be conscious of it, and where necessary, take action. So
This next one, One
Yeah.
Child Nation, this is really interesting to me.
Yes, this is this documentary opened up in late summer, and it's finishing up its run in theaters right now. It'll probably be going to home media in the near future. It tells the story of the Chinese one-child policy that was in place from 1979 to 2015, and it's quite shocking in many ways. A lot of people, I think, were aware of a rather sanitized view of this policy. But this film, directed by Chinese-born filmmaker Nanfu Wang, shows what went on inside China to help enforce this very draconian policy to control the population.
And what about
And,
eugenics? Does that, I'm sure that played a part in it.
yeah, I mean, at times there are some segments in this film that are really kind of difficult to watch because they're really quite shocking. But the one thing I do like about the film is the fact that the director kind of lets the people she interviews who are involved in the policy hang themselves. She doesn't go after them, with a lot of hysteria or claims like, how could you do this, things like that. She gives them enough rope for them to expose themselves and say, this is what went on. I mean, and some of them are some of the fallout that came from this in terms of child trafficking in adoptions and children who were just sort of wantonly killed shortly after birth and things like that.
Wow.
It's a lot to take in, but it tells a lot, and it also gives you a really good, clear indication of what the fallout of this has been for the Chinese people, where essentially they're left without almost a whole generation of people to support those who are older and need to be supported in retirement. So it's a really very compelling picture. Like I say, just be aware that there are parts of it that may be a little hard to take.
Okay, this next one is where we differ a little bit. I'm so excited.
Okay, so the last two movies I'm going to talk about today are two that I really wouldn't go out of my way to recommend very widely. The first one being Downton Abbey, which won the box office this past weekend on its opening run. It's a film that continues the story that was launched by the PBS TV series, which is wildly popular. And as someone who was not a fan of the TV show, I was going in cold in terms of knowing about the characters and the storylines and so forth. And unfortunately, to me, that was the film's biggest downfall, is the fact that it really didn't do an adequate job of providing the backstory that someone would need to really, I think, grasp fully exactly what was going on. I spent a lot of time kind of scratching my head at times going, who is she again? And what was their story? That kind of thing.
Yeah. And I understand that.
And the thing is, when a film makes the transition from the small screen to the big screen, it really needs to provide viewers who are not familiar with the source material with enough information to be able to get by and fully grasp exactly what's going on here. I think of the transitions that were made by franchises like Star Trek and the X-Files, which when they went to the big screen, they gave viewers enough to go on. This one, I think a large part of it had to do with the fact that since they were trying to cover so much ground in the runtime, that they had to make things go by very snappy.
It was so fulfilling. If you are a Downton Abbey fan and you watched all the seasons of Downton Abbey and you couldn't wait for it to come back, it was rich and fulfilling, and all your favorite characters are there. You've all got a piece of the action. Nobody was left out, which is just absolutely amazing, from Mosley to just everybody was there. I mean, Mary and her sister and her mom, and the Queen's coming, and it's so exciting, and royalty is showing up at Downton Abbey, and some of the shots were exquisite. I mean, like, don't get that kind of shot in watching it on Netflix.
Well, yes, I mean, in terms of the production values, the sets, the costumes, the cinematography, all this stuff, I can't take anything away from it on those values. It really was very well done. And I also really enjoyed the performances of Maggie Smith.
Oh, she's wonderful.
and Imelda Staunton, who I guess was brought on for the film specifically. And it is the kind of picture that a diehard fan, yeah, you're probably going to love this. You'll want to have a cigarette.
But did it make you want at least to go and watch it a little bit and see what you missed?
Well,
because Carson is he's so just brilliant, and you wonder why did they bring Carson back? Why is he there? But in the first season of it, you're just like, oh my God, you're afraid of this man. Like, these characters are rich and they're fulfilling, and I highly suggest anybody go and watch the entire series on Netflix and then go see this movie.
Well, I see, and those are the fans who I would most readily recommend this film to. I mean, people who are really very intimately aware of it, you'll probably love it. For somebody who's new to the material, you probably want to skip it, because I won't say you'll be lost, but you just won't feel like you're getting.
Well, it's like you. I mean, the critics the critics gave it like a 45 or something, and I think the people who loved it gave it like an 85 or 90.
Oh no, this has been pretty widely. It's been well embraced by both critics and audiences so far. I mean, fans have been a little bit more favorable to it than critics have, but its numbers have been pretty high. So,
but Ad Astra, that's another story.
Now this was the bigger disappointment. Ad Astra is a sci-fi film starring Brad Pitt, who goes on a mission to the outer reaches of the solar system to investigate a problem that's causing electromagnetic pulses to be released on the Earth. And it was believed that it was caused by an experiment that was begun by his father, who was also an astronaut. This was a picture that got a lot of hype before it was released. It was very heavily promoted in marketing materials, and critics have been just kind of falling all over themselves over it. And I found it really lacking. There were a lot of ideas that were sort of raised but never fully developed. Mm-hmm. There were a number of sequences that were actually kind of dull. The special effects was something that everybody was raving about. I thought they were okay. I didn't think they were outstanding. I kind of think that viewers may have been sort of suckered by the ad campaign to get people to go see it, because I think the distributors knew they kind of had a turkey on their hands here, and well, maybe if we promote it enough, people will go see it. But when you come right down to it and look at the numbers, this was one that critics loved, but audiences so far really have not been terribly kind.
They didn't like it. On Rotten Tomatoes, like, they just knocked that popcorn bag over and went, nope, we didn't like this movie at all.
I mean, when it first was released, it was something like 53% fresh by audiences, and yesterday it was down to 45, and I'm not sure where it stands now, but it's going in the opposite direction of where they probably would like it to be.
Was his dad Tommy Lee Jones? Is that who the dad was? I can't remember.
Yeah, he was the dad.
Yeah, he was the dad.
Yeah. I mean, it's got a good cast in it, Tommy Lee Jones, Donald Sutherland, Ruth Negga. I mean, Brad Pitt, I think he should stick to comedy. I think he's really much better at comedy than he is with drama. I don't know. If you're going to go see this, you're going at your peril, because I just really felt like this was a case where it never really got off the launch pad as well as it could. No pun intended there, but it never really got going as well as it could have. And also, there were points in the story where the directors could have taken this in a very different direction to have it be much more meaningful, much more enlightening, and they just completely missed them. And I kind of came away from that scratching my head too, saying, couldn't you see the potential from what you could have done with this if you had gone and followed that path? But that, for whatever reason, they didn't. So,
well, thanks for saving us $50. Well, you folks can just wait and see it on Netflix or something. And I'm sure that Out in Space.
Only if you have nothing else to do that night.
There you go. If you just have to watch Brad Pitt, you might tune in, I guess. But there's some other great movies that look like they're coming up soon. I'm excited, and hopefully, the next time you come, we'll have some good ones.
Well, yes, I'm especially looking forward to Judy, the film biography of Judy Garland that opens this Friday
with Renee Zellweger.
And also, I'm looking forward to Joker, which is the backstory of one of Batman's nemesis. played by Joaquin Phoenix. So, and also I'm coming up on the Chicago Film Festival in a couple of weeks. I can't wait for that because I
I
always
bet.
can't wait from that with lots of great films. So
Good. I'm excited. Let us know all about them.
I will.
And folks, thanks for tuning in today. And please go out and get Craig's book. It's wonderful. He's such a great guy, isn't he? And Brent will be back again with some movies and movie reviews. I can't even talk anymore. Movies with meaning. We'll see you later. Going to come off Facebook Live now. And here we go. Thanks, Brent.
Thanks, Frankie.
Okay, we'll talk to you soon.